Yerushalmi. Today we're going to go all the way.
The basis is there with the something, so I appreciate this.
Oh, all right. Today we're going to go. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Trumais Perek Ches Halacha Gimel. We're learning today Daf Ayin Ches. We left off Mamish on top of the Amid, Amar Rabbi Yaakov Baracha, and this is the final daf of the sugya of Gilui, which has in it, as we mentioned, more agadata that we had since when we began Yerushalmi brachas. Now, we left off yesterday on Daf Ayin Zayin Amid Beis regarding this concept that if there is a certain scenario in which snakes, let's say, are uncomfortable to venture out, during that time, there is no issue of Gilui. And as an example is during the rain. Then we just left off yesterday in the bottom of the Amid, how much rain does there need to be there? And we're going to continue to learn, Chevra, at the beginning of Daf Ayin Ches, as one of the interpretations that we used on Daf Ayin Zayin Amid Beis, that the issue with the rain, the maila of the rain, wasn't because of the dripping. There was a machlokes there between the Rosh Hashanah and the Marafulda. But he writes that since the earth is muddy, snakes don't like slithering on the floor when it's muddy. And based on that, we're going to have some more leniencies in the top of today's Amid. And me'inyan le'inyan, we're going to go from Gilui to the next Gezeda that we learned in the Mishnah, which is just like the Gezeda of the Yayin, Mayim, Cholav, later in the Braisa we learned yesterday, many more beverages. We also learned in the Mishnah regarding Nikure Te'enim. People use the word Nikure Te'enim because it's not just about Te'enim are figs. But that's the first thing the Mishnah said was Te'enim. Nikure Te'enim is that if you have fruits, no matter how big they are, because of their moisture, if they are perforated, the perforation could have come from many different places, but it could have come from a venomous creature. And not only that, the bite of the venomous creature in itself doesn't poison it, but the snake might have deposited after he ate or after he bit it, he might have put in there venom. And because of its moisture, this is very important, we say that the venom might have spread throughout the entire fruit or the entire vegetable, the entire watermelon, and none of it may be eaten. So we're going to have over here today, me'inyan le'inyan, this is going to be fascinating, a sugya that we have in Masechtas Para. Masechtas Para is about the Para Aduma. And we learned at Rambam, so Baruch Hashem, many of us are very familiar with these halachas. The Mechatos has a unique stringency connected to it, amongst many others, and that is that if there's any saliva, if there's any liquids that got mixed into the mechatos, all of that mechatos becomes invalidated. And therefore, if any animal will drink from the mechatos, domesticated animal, not domesticated animal, kosher animal, non-kosher species of animal, the way Hashem made animals drink is that when they take in, sometimes some of their saliva dribbles out, whether it is because they lap it up with their tongues, but there is an exchange. So there's a rule. If an animal drank from the mechatos, it's possible. What about the shmoyne shiratzim? The shmoyne shiratzim are the 8 creepers that are mentioned in Parsha Shemini that have this unique din that when they are dead, they impart tuma, like animals. Other shiratzim, when they're dead, they do not impart tuma. So by the shmoyne shiratzim, they're mished all of their in Masechtas Para. That all of the shiratzim, Hashem made them in a way that when they drink, they suck up the liquid and they don't put any of their saliva. So even if someone witnessed any, let's say a rat, a mouse, drinking from the mechatos that was left uncovered, it's still kosher to be used, with an exception of a weasel. So that the weasel, they lap it up with their tongue, that's a Mishnah. What about a nachash? I know the nachash is not one of the shmoyne shiratzim, but that's the Mishnah there. And there we have a machlokes tanoim, and the Gemara is going to make an attempted link between the machlokes we have in Masechtas Para regarding the nachash and everything we learned over the last few dafim, everything. And ultimately concluding that such a link should not be made, just to drill in the point, because chamira sakanta me'isura, as we'll see in today's daf. We're going to have at the end of today's daf 2 fascinating topics. Number 1, something that's called in English a psychedelic or a psychogenic, I take that back, a psychogenic death. Psychogenic death is a word in English. And I looked it up. What that means is that there are times that when people discover that they did something that they find so repulsive, they already did it. But now they know it, it can create such a shock to the system that it can lead to their death. So we're going to learn a little bit about stories about such a type of death. And ultimately, we're going to conclude this sugya, and this is very significant. I'm going to use the words in Chassidus, mit der Ingen of Isapcha. At Khan, we keep on referring to the Nachash as Rasha, because the Nachash HaKadmoni represents the Yetzer Hara. And indeed, as we mentioned, that it's not only an Ingen and Nigla that the Nachash might deposit Gashmi is the Kevenim, but there are Ruchos Ra'os, all connected to the Nachash HaKadmoni, and they imbue our lives. They poison everything, and that's part of the takana. So all of this describes the nachash in a very negative light. Now we also understand that the ultimate goal isn't only for us to abstain from the nachash, hiskafia, but the ultimate is to have an iyan of isabcha. And we're going to have stories in the Gemara that will be the conclusion of the sugya, where the nachash not only harmed the person, that's the goal, that the nachash actually saved the person. And me'inyan le'inyan, many other times in Chazal, whether you like it or not, we associate dogs with something negative as well. And just like the Gemara here is going to tell you the anomaly, the chiddush, the future, that the nachash will be a savior. So we're going to learn about how a dog can save a person's life, and we're going to have gavaldik asipurim. Being that it's a very small daf relatively, there was a story that we had in Masechtas Avodah Zarah regarding a dog with Rabbi Meir, and I'm going to, if we'll have time, we're going to also learn a shtickle of Agadata, fascinating, in Avodah Zarah daf Yudches, if we have time to get there. Okay, without any further ado, let's enjoy this, even though tomorrow we'll enjoy it even more. Then we're going to come back to Masechta Trumos, so to say. Amar Rabbi Yaakov Barach. Mikiven shehuter mashe b'sodom. Behemshach to what we learned yesterday. And we're going to follow the one understanding that mud is something that snakes don't like going on.
Is he frozen for everybody?
Yes.
I'll be in shul in 3 minutes. I'll let him know, but I don't know if he realizes it.
Mute.
You're muted. Oh, there we go.
Guys, I didn't go further. Something happened to the internet in the shul, but everyone can hear now, correct? I just want to say, I'm going to connect again. If we're not connected, I'm going to connect. No, we're on the live stream. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. Nice. I mentioned behemshich to what we learned on the Ein Zayin Amud Beis. Okay, so Nacham al Chevras. So says the Rashirilio, guys, look inside the top line in the right column, the end of the line. Huta Masha Babayis. Again, the Eina Yoitze, the snakes don't go out. They don't venture out. The Misyare, because they are, I'm using Taiching, they are afraid. Shalo Yistanev, for them not to get muddied. Now, why would it be mud in the house? So this is unique to the times of Chazal. That the Gam Karka Habayis Yesh Boitit, not because it rains, so water seeps in, Min Ha'anoshim Hanechnosim Min Achutz Labayis. In other words, when it's very, very rainy, you have to appreciate today, even in our homes, guys, what happens when it's really raining outside? Today you put a mat right in front of the house for people to dry off their shoes when they walk in there. In those days, they walked in the house with the muddy boots. Don't forget, the floors were also made out of earth. It wasn't so gefährlich. When it would dry up, it would go back to earth. In other words, in the case where the earth in the floors in the house became very wet, since it was earthen floors, same heter during that time. Gewaldig. Says the Gemara, Tani Rabbi Shaya, that this is a braisa that was taught by Rabbi Shaya. Hagiluyim, the laws of Giluyim that we may not consume from the liquids that were left uncovered, unsupervised, Noihagin, they are relevant, bein ba'aretz, bein b'chutz la'aretz. Whether you are in the Holy Land, whether you are outside the Holy Land. What's even the Havamina? Why would you even think that there is a difference? So there's an interesting Pri Chadash that says a Gavaldik Vart, even though it doesn't fully answer the question, but he says, based on what we learned in Perikei and Perikei Avos, that from the Asar and Nisim, that are connected to the Beis HaMikdash. The ninth is really not just about the Beis HaMikdash, but Shalei Hizik, Nachash ve'akrav, Yerushalmi. So one would have thought that since there is a Nes, that the Nachashim and the Akravim didn't damage anyone in Yerushalayim, so one would have thought that waters that were left uncovered, at least in Yerushalayim, I know it doesn't fit that much with Ba'aretz, that's the question, but it's a good word. You would think you can drink. And that's what the Baraisa is saying. Ein soim chanal al nes. The fact that Hashem made a nes shalei hizik, by the way, shalei hizik doesn't mean that they never bit anyone. It's even a bigger nes. It says that they never damaged. That means even if they were to bite someone, the Hashem made it that no one got poisoned. But ein soim chanal al nes, and you can't have the giloyim. And also, being b'maisak chama, being b'maisak shamim, makes no difference whether you are during the summer or in the winter. Says that Asher Ilyo, 3 lines from the top. The Gemara is concluding the sugya by quoting the Braisa from Rabbi Yishaya to tell you that he argues with everything we learned until now. We don't say that snakes don't venture out during the Yemaisak Shamim, because that's what we just learned, that during the rain, at least during the rain mamish, no difference. We don't say that. Certain Nechashim can go on the mud. Okay, that puts things in context over here. Now, me'ingen le'ingen, we learned about Nikurei Te'enim, which means the Mishnah says that if you have the examples the Mishnah gave us, if you have a fig, if you have a grape, look in the Mishnah. The last one was an avatiach. If there is a puncture, again, you would say, if it would only be an issue of Isser Veheter, I would say a Sfek Sveka. First of all, who says the puncture came from a venomous creature, B'chlal? And even if it came from a venomous creature, just because a snake was hungry or thirsty, doesn't mean Vadai he deposited venom. But maybe he did. And therefore none of it can be consumed. And like the Mishnah says, if it's dry, then you get to only cut away the place of the puncture, because even if there was venom, the venom will not spread throughout. But if it's moist, then it's going to be spread throughout. So says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Pazi. Now he is making an unbelievable suggestion, and as many learn, he's making a suggestion that will put into check everything we learned in the last couple of dafim. He's going to suggest that the whole issue of Giluyim and of Nikurei Te'enim is only following Das Yachid of Rabban Gamliel, which implies that Shitas Chachamim in Masechtas Para, like whom we paskin, argues with everything. That's really what he's trying to say, even though he's going to be refuted. Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Pazi, man tana Nikurim. Who is the author of Nikurim? And many understand it's not only Nikurim, it's Nikurim and Giluyim. That only follows the sheet of Rabban Gamliel, because it's the Rabban Gamliel Omer Af Hanacha Shehu Meiki. And just quickly repeating what we learned when we spoke out our intro. When animals, kosher or not, domesticated or not, if they somehow manage to get into a reservoir of mechatos, they were put away in vials. We learned in the Rambam they were shipped through all the cities throughout Eretz Yisrael. And Chutz La'aretz, where Yidden lived, it works. It doesn't have to be given in Eretz Yisrael, the mechatos. If they drink from it, even if you have a lot of mechatos and a little animal, the saliva goes back in, none of it is good to be used again. Shmoyne Shiratzim, Shof 8 out of the 9, no problem, because they only suck up the liquid. The Chulda, the weasel, let's touch it, the weasel, Vadai, like an animal, they lap liquids with their tongues. They for sure deposit saliva. Now, what about a Nachash? Machlekes Tanoim. Between Rabbim, the Chachamim, and Rabban Gamliel. The Chachamim say that even if you see a Nachash drinking from Mechatos, you can use the Mechatos. Why can you use the meis chatos? Because the nachash did not put any of its own saliva or poison in there. It didn't. Rabbi Gamliel is chayish to that. This is our topic. So it sounds like only Rabbi Gamliel that gives credence to the small possibility that a nachash, while it's taking in, will also put out. And when it puts out, I know by mechatas it doesn't have to be poison. By mechatas, any saliva, even not venomous saliva, creates a problem. Here the issue is of poison, but we're equating them. In other words, who said the nachash put anything out there? The fact, if the nachash would deposit venom, then the chachamim would also say that afa nachash hu meki. But they don't say that. Bimitzias could be 1 out of 100. Could be 1 out of 1,000. The chachamim does say that we don't, halachically, it's too little of a possibility for us to paskin a din. Only Rabbi Gamliel is chayish. So therefore it comes out, that's what Rabbi Yehuda ben Pazi is saying, that everything we learned is only das yachid. None of what we learned is halachically valid. Amar Rabbi Yoina, you're wrong. Don't compare one topic to the other. And this is very important. Ma achaflan. Why are you fadreing? Okay, that's a Yiddish word. Mitzvahs gaben nikurim. That is a typical example of that. Chamira sakanta me isura. You cannot learn. You have this rule. You can't learn dinei mamanis from dinei isurim. We don't learn dinei knas from dinei mamanis. You have klalim. You try to achas, but nevertheless, there are different areas in halacha, and they don't follow all the same rules. So when it comes to isur beheter, over there, since the chances of the nachash depositing venom is very little, taka machlokes tanoim, and the chachamim hold, and we paskin like the chachamim, it's such a small percent that we don't have to be chayish that they were making, and you can use the mechatos. Even the chachamim will be moida when it comes to sakanta. This is about a pikuach nefesh. We're mechalal Shabbos not for a suffix pikuach nefesh, for a sfeika. Normally, a sfek sveka already becomes a completely mutter. Doesn't follow on the same track. That's the word achaplan. Don't mitzvahs means isurim. How can you confuse isurim with nikurim? That's gavaldik. And we had and veloy chein tani. And really, I'll prove it to you. Everyone agrees that when it comes to a chashash of sakana, even though by danger we're going to err on the side of caution, the same opinions when it comes to dinei isurim, even though for us, you're kidding, isurim, kosher and treif. What's more important? We're going to be more lenient. As an example, it says in a braisa, if you see a bird, not a venomous creature, that is pecking on a te'ena, on a fig, or if you see an achbar, he's just giving, diber ha braisa b'hoiva. That's how it works. A bird is going to go on the tree, and a mouse is going to go on an avatiach. So if you see that happening, so you would think, 1 second, hareza asur, the Braisa says, the din of nikuri ta'enim applies over there, which is a big chiddush. Why is it a big chiddush? Because I know where the hole came from. The hole came from the bird. No, we say that maybe prior to the bird coming, a snake a bit over there, and when the bird came, the bird pecked exactly on top of the hole. So, because ani oimer, that mekoim haneker ochlu, how great is that? So now, we in other areas of halacha, we don't have such a chashash as we'll prove in a moment. In other words, you see that only when it comes to sakanta do we give credence to something that's so unlikely. So it has nothing to do with the Mishnah in Param. And the Gemara says, "V'Omar Rabbi Bam," regarding this braisa, that hu Amar Nachash Chayzer Umeki. So when Rabbi Ba learned the braisa of Tzipor Nekeres, Rabbi Ba did what Rabbi Yehuda ben Pazi did. He says, that braisa only follows again Rabbi Gamliel Mesechtes Para. He made the same comment, right? Because he is the one that says Nachash Chayzer Umeki. And Rabbi Yoina also told him, no, don't say that. Ma ofchai. Ofchai means, the word sudreit is perfect in Yiddish because it's from hafuch. Why are you turning over? Why the word confusing? Is not as accurate as lahapich. Was dreistu lemitzvah is gabe nikurim. As an example, Inyan treifa, which is a great example. What do we find by treifas? That, there are many organs, inner organs, aviv, in an animal. Not all of them have to be checked. But if certain inner organs in an animal, after it had a proper shechita, if you find a perforation, that animal becomes treif. Today, when we shecht an animal, you have to check the lungs. And what are we checking for? To see whether it's perforated or not. Now, what were to happen if you shecht an animal, and before you had a chance to be boidik an animal, just as a wolf, a wild chaya came, schlepped away the lungs, you grabbed it back, but now you can see on the lungs a wolf bite. So we say it's not treif, because you know it came from the wolf. Hold on. Why don't we say that there was a hole in the lung? And when the wolf bit on the lung, it bit b'diuk on that place. No one says that. Why not? Exactly, because when it comes to the dinim of kosher and treif, which is taka very chomer, it's not about sakanta, there's certain rules. The chances are very little. Same concept. That of Omar Rabbi in the name of the Rabbanon of Bavel, that the din is that if you shecht an animal, any animal, and wolf snatched the b'nei ma'el. I said lungs. It's not the lungs, it's the intestines. By the way, we don't have to check the intestines, but the rules of a perforation are the same, right? There are 8 treifas, there are 18 treifas, however you categorize them. So there the din is ksheira. Why? Because shecheskas b'nei ma'ayim is kosher. You begin with that, you don't even have to check it. So you can say, even if there's a hole, the Ze'evim grabbed it. So says Rabbi Yoina, Shema Nikfu. Hold on. Why don't we say the same thing? Maybe there was a hole when the animal was alive. And the fact that you saw the Ze'evim grab the B'nei Ma'ayim, and you see, let's say, a hole from the tooth of the Ze'ev, maybe he bit it on the same hole. We don't say that. Why? Because Cheskas B'nei Ma'ayim kosher. And nevertheless, in the Braisa of the Tzipor Nekeres B'te'ena, V'hocha at Omar Hachin, how? Because Chamira Sekanta Misura. Returning to the fine Chesam base. Because Chaymer Hubas Akonis Nefashis, and therefore everyone agrees, the Yardu, B'Nikurim, they suspect regarding the din of Nikurim, and we're going to add, of Giluyim, like the Das Yachad of Rabbi, even the Chachamim and Mesech Espada will agree to the sheet of Rabbi Gamliel when it comes to Sakonom. Gewaldik. Says the Gemara weiter, we learned in the Braisa Rabbi Eliezer, Amen. That a person is allowed to eat either figs or grapes at night. We're speaking about people who don't have the type of electricity or lighting that we have. In other words, Aviv, you're not obligated to check every single fig or every single grape, even if it's dark. It sounds like if it's light, you should look. But if it's dark, you can do it. Maybe there's a hole in it. Why not? Because shenemar shomer pesayim Hashem. And just to reiterate, that the rule, this is a big klal gadol. When do we say the pasuk that we from Halal, right, from Tehillim, shomer, that God guards the foolish? We only say it not to justify you being foolish. We say it that whenever the society, for whatever reason, even for foolish reasons, are not cautious regarding a certain behavior, if society says this type of behavior is in the category of safe, there is where we can say Shomer Pesayim Hashem. Just like in the opposite, we had 2 daf ago, that if the society says, don't put coins in your mouth, even though Chazal in the earlier generations never said it, once the society says this is dangerous behavior, we're not allowed to engage in it.
If someone does a mistake, it felt like it's okay.
Shlomo is right that sometimes we say Shomer Pesayim Hashem when a mistake happened. Foolish means you were ignorant, you didn't even know you're doing something wrong. But lachatchila you can have te'enim anav malayla. Why? Because here we say Shomer Pesayim Hashem. Danny is saying a good thing that maybe the people that took the COVID vaccine, even though it was somehow mavish mamish, worse than COVID, PSR, but many people had Shomer Pesayim. Many people got heart attacks and strokes. I'm saying. Okay, yesh v'yesh. I don't know. Okay, let's go back. All the rest of us didn't, but we don't know yet. And all right. No, but you see what the Gemara knows. Look at the Chachma of Rabbi Yochanan, whoever the compilers. When you finish learning the last shtickle, you say Chamira Sakanta Meisura. You have to go all the way. Suffix, sveka. The Gemara puts a limit on it. ein lo davar soif. I think that's the logic to say, hold on, if people do certain things,
You gotta be able to eat at night.
you have to be able to eat at night. Very good. Says Rabbi Yoina b'Shem Rav. Now we're going to go regarding a punctured fish. And again, the big topic by punctured is that the Mishnah gave a klal. The klal is that if the fruit or vegetable is moist, then we say that the moisture somehow allowed for the venom to pass throughout. Only when it's completely dry do we only limit the issur of eating the area of the puncture. How do we apply that by a fish? That's really going to be the topic. So we have b'Shem Rav, Rabbi Yoina b'Shem Rav, dag, nikur. If you have a punctured fish, we also say that the puncture might have come from a rachash. It's not that you saw a snake. You don't know who bit it. Could have been a venomous. Could be it's a venomous other fish. Concept is that it could be there was some. Even though maybe Aviv, the fish that took a bite was just wanted to have a snack, but maybe it deposited venom, and the whole fish becomes usher. Now that has to be clarified. So here we have a machlokes. So Rav Chizkiya and Rav Tavi said b'Shem Rav, when do we say that the entire fish becomes problematic? Either dag nikur chai asur, either if it was punctured when the fish was still alive, that's the easiest because a living, more than a watermelon. In a watermelon, there's no circulation. It's just moist. A living creature, right? There's the heart, everything is moving around. So either if the fish was alive when it got bitten, so we say that if the puncture deposited venom, the venom spread throughout, or
Question.
one second, Vlad. Or even if you know it got punctured after it was already not living, but if it was a very salted fish, interestingly, the salt has this koyach of
Right.
making everything spread throughout. Either or. In other words, al yedei melicha mischalchel. But, not a machlokes, but if the fish was mace when it got punctured, Vlad, you know it happened only after, and the fish wasn't a salted fish. It doesn't mean it wasn't from the salty sea. It means it wasn't salted. People, human beings did not add salt. So there we say, like the Mishnah says, that the vegetable or the fruit, you only cut out that part. You say the same thing by the fish. Noitel makim haneker. Vlad, what do you want to ask?
The question I have is the live fish. Isn't the water moving? Didn't we just go through the whole sugya of if there's water movement, the snake won't come near you?
First of all, if dripping is one thing in the water, there's no dripping in the water. There's no mud in the water. There's no mud in the water.
No, movement itself isn't enough.
No, movement itself, clearly not. It was the vibration of drop, the Chinese torture. Go to your mind if you have drip. Okay. Says the Gemara weiter. Rabbi Yaakov Baracha b'Shem Rabbi Chia Barba. Avatiach shenikar. Which is what we learned in the Mishnah. Now, or, we're going to learn with the word or, that will change everything. That if shenis mas misu b'nei me'el, if you open up a watermelon and the insides, the ma'ayin of the watermelon is dissolving, we learned this a few days ago about bread that is crumbling. Any item that is fabreckled is an indication that at least it could have come from venom. So here we say it's asur. No, it's don't only the concept of te'enim shenikru is not just punctured. If there's something that could have come from poison, Chazal said you're not allowed to eat it. Says the Gemara. There was a person that had this melafafine, right? That was punctured. And and he gave it. He didn't care about this din of nikuri te'enim. So he was a nice guy. A nice guy. He gave it to 10 people. All of them died. So what happened is avras ririn ilave upesakte. So what pshat is, there's two ways of learning this. The first pshat in the Marafulda is that why did everyone die? Again, this is just a proof that unlike by the fish, right? Even though the fish is moist, we just learned if it's dead and it's not salty, it won't pass. By produce from the ground, we don't say that. We say that even if there was a big melon and the bite was in the northern corner, the southern corner also will have poison. Or the Marafulda says, teaches these words around 12 lines from the top, Lishnachrinam, that avras, not ridin, but dirin, avru diyurin olav, the people that lived in that neighborhood, when they found out that this person right, who should have known better, he learned this. He just didn't care about it. That man, you know what he do to him? That's psakte. If I'll say it in English, they'll ban us from the YouTube. No, they killed him. They cut him into two. He's a mazik. He was a murderer. At kedei kach.
It's interesting that in Yerushalmi that is big enough for it can be fitting for 10 people. Usually in Yerushalmi it's a small one.
So I just want to make one point over here, which is interesting, that we said this in the beginning. For some reason, even though it's called Talmud Yerushalmi, not Talmud B'nai Marava, even though many people call the Talmud B'nai Marava, but we call it Talmud Yerushalmi, the Talmud Yerushalmi was written in the north of Eretz Yisrael, primarily in Tevere and further north. Why? Because of Roman persecution, because of Roman primarily not allowing us to learn Torah, all of the Chachamim moved to the north of Eretz Yisrael to be able to learn Torah, maybe because it's more countryside, or maybe initially there wasn't such big gezetas in the north. But since they came from Yerushalayim, they called themselves the Yerushalmis. Not to forget where they came from, but it's not Yerushalmi. Today we go to Eretz Yisrael, a guy who's from Tiberia will call himself a Yerushalmi, it's Nish Temes. Maybe in the north, the Malaf Fanis are bigger. I'm saying you're thinking because Shlomo grew up in Yerushalayim. Shlomo, it's little. Maybe over there, maybe it's Echveis. Good point. Okay, weiter. There was a person that couldn't tolerate lamb meat. I want to say that nowadays, sometimes lamb meat, if it's not prepared properly, has a horrible odor. I remember coming into shul one morning, and it really smelled like the cholent is not stamof, it was shreklach. And the Gabbai told me, no, it's lamb meat. I remember him saying that. How did that help me? It smelled horrible. So there was a guy that he detested lamb meat. Chadzman achel kupat. One time he ate meat, and Avar chad v'amalei, after he ate it, someone told him, you're supposed to listen, the imar, from an imra, it was from a lamb. He already ate it. So what happened was that the iskal as umiz, he became so disgusted by the fact that he ate something that he detested. This is called a psychogenic death. In other words, there is a shock to the psyche. Oh my God, I ate something that I'm disgusted. And that begins some sort of process that ends in death. Another story, that Chamoraya. Now, why are we mentioning this over here? All because of a snake. We're getting there. That Chamoraya, Shiroim, Pundikayam, they were donkey drivers. Today it's called truckers. So they stay overnight at an inn. Amrin Lan, and part of the service that was common in the inn then, everything was kosher. It was bread. It's called bed and breakfast. That was a normal thing. All the mices, all of the Kedeshmas, they had food. So they got to stay overnight. They went into the kosher dining room and they told their host, Havulan to loifchen, give us lentils. I'm assuming that was the cheaper supper. They were poor people. Not meat, give us lentils. V'yavain, and he gave them lentils. And when they finished round number 1, they asked for a second serving. Amrilan, they told him, Havuloin tiniyaan, right? Nachamol. Can we have a second, sir? Seconds. And he would then again, v'yavain. Amriloin, and then they made a comment regarding the taste of the food. And they told the host, they told the chef that kadmaya haven't tovin min ilain, that the first serving of lentils tasted better. So he said, of course. Of course. Why? Because shezerate dichivei ashkechan bohain. I found, after I gave you the lentils the first time, I found the spine of a snake in the lentils. In other words, he discovered that part of what they ate was snake. That's why it had such a good taste. You're looking at me, Aviv. Aviv, if you go today to the Far East, you have no idea what those people eat. And when they are alive, they have plates where the creatures have their feet. If you don't eat it quick, they run off your plate. You'll lose your supper. It's unbelievable. How first of all, the ikid is what the Oibishter said. We're not allowed to eat it. We, Goyim, can eat it. But I think it's repulsive for people like us. But anyways, when they heard that they ate the snake, so the same thing, v'iskalasun umisun. So they became so disgusted or repulsed by the fact that they already consumed it, that they had a psychogenic death, and they pasha died. The psychic, that's poison, just not a physical poison. maybe the Gemara wants to point out that not all poison has to be physical, especially since nowadays, again, in Shulchan Aruch, even though we accept that the types of snakes are not found nowadays, on some level, we don't have wine that was left uncovered for Kiddush. Why not? Not because we're saying a snake, a physical snake, because we're saying some Ruach HaTumah, some spiritual snake, put its stuff in it. And that's just as detrimental, maybe even more detrimental. Maybe that's the way the Gemara wants to show you these stories at the end. Maybe. Now we have like this, as we mentioned in the words of introduction, that every time we speak about the snake is this monster. And indeed, the Nachash HaKadmoni, one of the symbols of the Yetzer Hara, of the Satan, is a snake. However, being that the ultimate goal, step number one is we got to kill the snake. Step number one. Step number two, at the end, everything has to be transformed into good. So the Gemara now will conclude with the following. And we're quoting a pasuk in Mishlei. The pasuk you can see in the Torah reads that B'ritzois Hashem Darchei Ish. B'ritzois means when God finds favor in a certain man's ways, when someone is beloved by God, you know what happens ultimately? Gam oivav yashlim itoy. Ultimately, even his enemies become good to him. He transforms everything around him. So Rav Meir says, who's the enemy of man? As a snake is a representation of something evil, same as with the dog. And as it's shaykh for a snake to be turned around for the good, for the people here in LA that have dogs, don't get nervous. Okay, here we're up to Mashiach already. Everything is isapchad, that even a dog can become your man's best friend. Zajac. And so either it goes to the Kelev, Rabbi Meir, or Rabbi Shua ben Levi says that Hanachash. Now, why does Rav Meir say, I'm going to read it if we have enough time. Why does Rav Meir, he's the one that says that the Oivav is the Kelev. The kasha is not why is Kelev your Oivav. That's a given. Because there's a story we have in Avodah Zarah in which you see how a dog helped Rav Meir. And this is a very tragic story. I'm going to take out a Masechtas Avodah Zarah Bavli, that Yud Zayin Amud Beis is where it begins. And over there, this is all the record of the death of Rab Chanina ben Teradion. Just to know, Rabbi Meir was the son-in-law of Rabbi Chanina ben Teradion. Rav Meir's wife was Beruria. Beruria was the daughter of Rabbi Chanina ben Teradion. Rabbi Chanina ben Teradion had another daughter. And part of the cruelty that Rome did against us as Jews, and specifically against Rabbi Chanina ben Teradion, is that another daughter, or the sister-in-law of Rabbi Meir, was condemned to go and to be a zoina in a Beis Zoinas. That's what they condemned her to that. And that is what we have on Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis. So now on Daf Yud Ches Amud Aleph in the bottom, it's around 7-8 lines from the bottom by the dot. So the Gemara says, Beruria, the Visu de Rabbi Meir, Beruria, the wife of Rabbi Meir, Berate de Rabbi Chanina ben Teradion, she was another daughter, because the Gemara spoke about the other one. Havoi Amrali, she told her husband that Zilla be Milsa. It's horrible for me. The Yosva Achsoi Bikuba Shel Zoinos. That my sister was condemned to become a Zoina. So what did he do, Rabbi Meir? Shakal Tar Kaba, 3 kav of dinrei, a pile of money. But the Alpi, we spoke of many times, is an Ingan, a 2 and 1. 3 kava. He took a pile of money, and Va'azal Amar, and he said, Ki'ilu to himself, that is avid boy yisura, that if no sin happened to her yet, Miss Abid Nisa, a miracle is going to happen. Rab Meir Balanes, he was the one that did miracles. However, he said that of the Isura, that if something already happened, if she did an Isur, then I won't be able to help her. Lo Yis'avid Banis. Okay. Azali went. He dressed up like a horseman. In other words, he dressed up like a type of person that would be a customer in a Beis Zoinos. And he walked in there. And he found her. And Amar La, and he, it's called propositioned her. Amar La, Hashmi Einili. He wanted to see if she's holding on to her tzidkis or not. Amar Le, so to get him away, she told him, Dashtonana, which means they're having my cycle. Can't. Amar La, so he told her, okay, Misrachna Mirsach, I'll wait. Amar Le, so she tells him, nah, why would you wait? And efficient, Tuva, the Shapirim, there are so many other that are prettier than me. So from the way she was pushing him away, not in a way where she's defying Rome, she was condemned to be there. She was finding excuses. So Rav Meir says, Shema mino lo yavdei surah, that this is a righteous woman, and therefore he was confident that a miracle will happen. Now Rav Meir was risking his life because what he was doing was he was going to get her to escape. So, but how did he do it? Because Rav Meir says, Kol da'aseh, whoever came, amra le'achim. He felt that this is what she's telling all of the customers. He went to her guard. And Amar Lane, he told the guard that Havan Nahala, I wanna let her go out with me. Amar Lane, so the guard told Rabbi Meir, I'm afraid of the government. Can't allow her to go. Amar Lane, so he told him, Shkol Tarkaba de Dinra, gave a pile of money, and he told him, Palga plach upalga lehevilach. Half of it used for bribes, and half of it keep for you. Problem is that Rome kept on checking if she's there. So every time they checked, he has to bribe. So the pile of money, or half of it, will run out. So the guard told him, half for him was good. Problem is he needs more money for bribes. Amalei, the chishalma mayavid. What should I do if the money runs out? Listen to this, guys. Amar Lei Rav Meir told him, Ema, if at that point you should say, Elokad de Meir Aneni. And if you say those words, that you will be saved. He notes he gave him the real deal, the secret. Amalei, so this guard told Rav Meir, Daf Yud Chesam et Beis, prove it to me that when you make such a statement, it works. Amalei hashtachazis. I'll show it to you right now. What did Rav Meir do? Hava hanu kalbe. There were dogs. They have a ka'achle inchi. There were dogs that were eating people. What's called a pit bull. No, it's guard dogs. Dogs that were made to attack people. Shakal Kala, Rav Meir went. He went to these evil dogs, and he threw earth in their face. In other words, he instigated them, and they came to attack him. Hava ka'asi lemichle. Amar, Rav Meir himself says, Elokad de Meir Aneni. And when he said that, Shafkua, the dogs left him go. So when the guard saw that, he knew that this is the real segula that works. Badakamenusa, and V'yavale, and he gave, and he gave a whole story, and he gave her away, and how Rome came, and at the end, he said, Elokad de Meir Aneni, and he was saved, this guard. And he kept half of the pile of money. And Bekitza, you see that Rav Meir had an experience that even when it comes to a kelev ra that eats people, a mazik dog, that he considered the dog his chaver, because through the dog he was able to save his sister-in-law. That's called isapcha. So that's Rabbi Shua ben Levi says it goes to the Nachash. And now the Gemara here will bring stories, anomalies, both concerning a dog and concerning a snake. So Rayah Chalbun Chalav. So there were people, there were shepherds that they were milking their animals. And a snake came, snake came and drank from the milk. Now, what did we just learn right now? That once a snake drinks from the milk, there's a possibility that it's poisoned. However, the herdsmen did not see that. But you know who witnessed that? There was a dog that saw that a snake is drinking. Now listen to this. Kad asen yechlun. So now, when the shepherds came to drink from the milk, the dog was trying to stop them. The dog was communicating to them. And what did the dog do? Is Mishrei Novach, when he began to bark. The dog was telling them, don't do it. But they didn't chap that the barking of the dog is a warning not to drink the milk. V'loi is boinen, but they were not nisboinen. They didn't understand the language of the dogs. So what happened? The dog went on Mesiras Nefesh. The dog, to save its owners from death, the dog drank from the milk. In order for the dog to die, the dog sacrificed himself for them to see that this milk is venomous, and then that's like what happened. But that's the anomaly. That's Mashiach. That's LA. I see how many people right here are thinking about their dog, and they are offended with, what do you mean a bad dog? Okay, weiter. Chad Banash, another story. Have a tum shchik koibese. He had ground garlic in his house. Guys, snakes like garlic. For us, a chivar de tur. So a snake from the mountain, the mountain snake came, and it went into the garlic. But again, when it goes into it, it might have deposited venom. Now a guy had a snake in the house, and he saw how the mountain snake ate. The people in the household came, and they were going to eat from the garlic. But who witnessed it? The snake. is mishrei misarter aleon afar. So how did the snake cannot bark. You know what the snake did? The snake kicked up dirt. It put dirt on it. It put dust on top of the garlic. That was the way of the snake trying to tell the chevra, don't do it. But there was no tvuna, there was no understanding. So what happened? The kalkal gave. So the snake went into the garlic. He didn't have to kill himself. The snake went into the garlic. When people saw the snake in the garlic, they were disgusted by it. They didn't have it. And the final story, there was a man that invited a rabbi, a big rav, to come eat in his house. And so imagine you have a guest, the dayan from over there, and so you give him as a head seat, and right next to the guest's seat, on the next seat, the balabas put his dog. This is a minig in LA. Oh, so Amalei, so the Rav felt insulted. You're putting me on a chair and you're putting your dog on the chair next to me. Bizoyan ano chayiv loch. Why do I owe such a bizoyan? Amalei, so the host tells him, Rabbi, no, I am not dishonoring you, but yes, I'm honoring my dog. Tivu ano mishalem lei. How do I honor my dog? By placing my dog next to a dayan. I was waiting for you to come to show my dog that for me, you, the dog, are like the dayan. But why? Because shaboyin aloin lekarto. There were times that people, abductors, kidnappers, came into the city, and one of these horrible people went into my home. And ba'a minsav itzi, he was about to violate my wife, and my dog came va'achal beitzav, and it ate the manhood of this attempted person, and that was the end of him. So as a chashivus, he gets to sit. When he told that to the dayan was very afraid, I'm sure, for his man, that maybe that was the way he kept the dayan in place. But the stories means that there is a transformation over here, that even a dog, even a snake, are able ultimately to help a person and not to hurt the person.